In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 62. Andrew and Jerry say, and we do say greatly and emphatically, that everyone is wrong about the Trump indictment. I'm Andrew Langer.
Jerry Rogers.
And this episode is going to be tight, bright, and out of sight real quick. I am back. Sorry for the delay. I was away in the Pacific Northwest for a couple of weeks. And then last week, Jerry and I were just dealing with work stuff as we were getting back into things. But we're back now. And not a moment too soon, Jerry, because we continue to talk about this indictment that happened while I was away, and then the arraignment that happened right when I got back. But everybody is wrong about this, aren't they?
Well, yes. I mean, right. You have those who are pro-Trump regardless, and they see it as no value. There's nothing to see here. Right. And I read the indictment. I read the 37 counts.
As have I.
And it's serious, and it's comprehensive, and it's detailed, and so they get it wrong when they say this is not a serious legal challenge. It is. It certainly is, especially when you think about the process crimes, the obstruction of justice or false statements. You know, this is where Donald Trump's in jeopardy. But then again, those who are anti-Trump are contorting themselves and fighting straw men to make the case that Trump is guilty. And
given the overtop reaction of the anti-Trump folks that are out there, you would have thought that Donald Trump literally was inviting folks to use his bathroom, like charging Korean and Chinese and Russian spies money to use his bathroom at Mar-a-Lago so they could get a secret peek at these documents.
But and again, let me be specific. Like former AG Bill Barr, I like this man. I respect him. Right. He has been right in the past, so I don't have any axe to grind. But when he says that President Trump, former President Trump, does not have access or should not have possession of presidential papers, the Presidential Records Act doesn't cover that. Bill Barr is just wrong. Right. And again, I know that he's an attorney, but again, the plain reading of the statute makes it very clear that a former president is has the authority to have his papers, including classified papers, and that includes in his possession. Right. And so this idea that he shouldn't have had these papers is just wrong. And then secondly, we're seeing surprisingly, some of our libertarian friends are saying that, well, Trump didn't really have the authority to declassify these documents because there are these new super secret classification and the president is not so simple. Well, yes, it is. The Constitution makes it simple. Well, so my point is that even people that we trust, not necessarily the Lincoln Project types,
right,
but men and women with whom we have a great respect, have said things, written things that are just plain wrong.
Well, this is the weird thing, right? Is that yet again, we have the libertarians, small L libertarians, who, for a lot of reasons, were never fans of Trump, though, I always found it strange. Donald Trump was literally trying to take steps to shrink the size and scope of federal government power and federal authority and make government operations more transparent. Those same sectors are, for whatever reason, I guess, carrying water for the national security state, which is such a strange thing for me. The idea that there are pro-secrecy, pro-national security libertarians that are out there. And again, it gets down to the political side of things. By the same token, I want to also point out to our friends who are pro-Trump supporters who are raising the argument, which is just a crazy argument, Jerry, that Donald Trump can't be indicted because the Constitution doesn't give power doesn't say that a former president can be indicted, which is just crazy.
That's true, but you know what? Our friend Brian Darling, who is a longtime political expert, Heritage Foundation. He worked as
worked for Rand Paul,
Counselor Rand Paul. Was on my radio show this week. We do the Liberty Update. He's the founder, president of Liberty Government Affairs. Anyway, but he said something very interesting that I had not thought of until Brian Darling said it. And he said that the Presidential Records Act, there is nothing written in the law, in the statute, that carries penalties. So even if a former president is in violation of the Presidential Records Act, which I don't think Donald Trump is, by the way, even if you're in violation of former president, it's not clear as to if there are penalties.
Well, time out for a second.
Which is very interesting.
Really be clear about two things, because the one is the idea that this is not just indicted under the Presidential Records Act, but there are folks who are making the argument that a former president cannot be indicted, period.
Right. Well, I was adding some.
That's what makes this so interesting, and where people are getting it right and wrong. And again, there are very few exceptions here. Brian Darling, I think, being one of them. Jonathan Turley being another.
Yes.
And
yes.
Makes the important point that Brian is correct that the Presidential Records Act does not carry penalties to it, and that would put it on very shaky ground. But it's the fact that the president that President Trump is being charged under the Espionage Act for things that are related to.
But the interesting thing there is, again, going back to the plain reading of the law, the law says that the former president, shall have access, including possession of his presidential papers, which includes classified documents, him or herself or his designate.
Right.
So you can make the argument that I'm former President Donald Trump and I have a classified document and I show it to my friend Andrew Langer under there is an interpretation of the Presidential Records Act that allows me to do that. Now, even if the Presidential Records Act doesn't allow me to do that, which I don't think is true.
Yeah,
there is no penalty under the Presidential Records Act if I share it.
Which then gets into these issues of the Espionage Act, which is a little bit more serious. But again, the real question, and this is why, folks who are sort of dancing with glee about this, because that's what they've always wanted. And again, I come back to, we're talking about since before Donald Trump became president, the folks in the national security world have been constantly accusing him of trying to sell out our secrets. Remember, this was also a theme during Donald Trump's presidency.
Right. Can I just comment on that? Because this is really this is the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah. Right.
But there is no evidence that Donald Trump in any way benefits his business, his person, his family. There's no evidence that he benefits from sharing or dismantling America's foreign policy apparatus. Yes. But yet this has been the charge. Maybe it's as simple as this, that Donald Trump thinks that for the past 40 years, our post-war foreign policy in terms of its focus, also its push of free trade, of the one China policy. Maybe he thought these things were wrong.
Absolutely.
And that's really the issue.
But also, let's get back to this, right? Which is now here, I want to be really clear about this, because so many things can be true at once. It's not an either or scenario. This gets into what Jerry and I are talking about here. And this issue of calling balls and strikes. It is possible, in fact, it is most likely, that Donald Trump can be guilty of being pursued. Like, Donald Trump angered the intelligence community before he got elected. So the intelligence community turned against Donald Trump and was trying to get Donald Trump all 4 years of his presidency.
Which by the way, is not a matter of argument.
Right.
We now know they abused the process, abused the courts, that the intelligence community, the Obama, Biden White House, the FBI, the DOJ, all were weaponized and politicized to go after candidate Trump, right, and then later President Trump.
Right. We
know this.
And in fact, the recent report demonstrates this. It is possible for all of that to be true, excuse me, and also possible for Donald Trump to be guilty of violating the law here.
Yes.
You know, and all of these things, you know, this is the crazy times.
And it could be true, Andrew, that he is not guilty of violating the Espionage Act. He's not guilty of violating the President's Records Act, that this was a politicized Department of Justice, that this literally is Joe Biden arresting and going after, indicting his political opponent. And that could all be true.
Hold on.
Wait, that could all be true. Wait, let me finish. That could all be true. At the same time, during this investigation, Donald Trump could have made false statements and obstructed justice.
Right. And it could also be true that they're doing this not to remove Donald Trump from being a candidate for 2024, but because they want Donald Trump.
Well, yes. Ding, ding, ding. Exactly right.
And they want the debate to be about what Donald Trump did and about whether or not Donald Trump has the right to run for president and all of those things.
Oh, Andrew, it could be much more based than that. It could just simply be that they believe that the numbers, the data, the polling clearly demonstrates that Donald Trump cannot win a second, non-consecutive term.
Well, there's that aspect of it, though I will say, and not to digress because I want to keep this tight and on subject, there's a really great piece in New York Magazine about the sort of the leftist third party movement that is really concerned about the efforts of no labels. Like they are deeply troubled that the no labels candidate will spoil it for Joe Biden and will cause Donald Trump to be elected president.
It's funny. I've offered commentary on this because our friends on the right say that this would be a threat to the Republican Donald Trump, and I said I don't think so. I think a moderate Democrat, moderate liberal Republican running against Biden, Harris, Trump, whomever, I think that really does more damage to Joe Biden.
It's possible.
But regardless of that, remember, No Labels has made clear, though, that if Donald Trump is not on the ticket, they will not put up a third party.
So here's the interesting thing. You want to underscore how schizophrenic we are as a nation on this. And I know that's not the right term, but you want to underscore how schizophrenic we are as a nation. The overwhelming majority of Americans believe that these charges against Donald Trump are politically motivated.
Yes.
But by the same token, an overwhelming majority of Americans also believe that these are serious charges against Donald Trump.
Well, they are serious charges.
Yes, this is where we are.
Again, going back to Bryant Darling, what he said on my radio show this week, he said, the prosecutor in any case, and Brian's an attorney.
Yeah.
He said, Brian's an attorney and legal counsel to members of the United States Senate. Anyway, he said that the best day for the prosecution, the very best day where their case looks open and closed, is the day the indictment drops.
Right.
And then every day thereafter, you begin to look at the case and look at the evidence and look at the indictments and realize, well, it's not open and closed.
And then there are the underlying issues, which is, again, where people are wrong. The mere fact that Donald Trump was indicted is not prima facie evidence that we are now living in a banana republic. You can make the case possibly.
So now Jerry might disagree with Andrew on this.
Okay. But hold on. But just that one fact alone is not evidence of this. But how we got to this point.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead and if you want to respond to that now, because I want to get into the attorney-client privilege issue.
Yes, but here's what I think. I think that America is very close to a point of no return. We might have passed it. I think this indictment, it's unprecedented. It was unnecessary. It's overtly political. And again, it turns us into something that we haven't been. Now, can America recover from it? Of course. But let me just add this on. Again, Alan Dershowitz, writing in Compact Magazine, wrote a brilliant piece about what if both Trump and the prosecutors are guilty.
Yeah.
And
this gets into this, right?
And he makes the case. He said, look, what if there was a rogue prosecutor, politicized, weaponized on the issue of race, and decided that African Americans pose a significant and unique threat to public safety. So therefore, his office was only going to pursue criminal charges, indictments, etc., against African Americans, and would not consider other races, but solely, uniquely going after African Americans. But use the law to do so.
Right.
Like not break, like use the law, use everything in the legal arsenal to go after African Americans. That would be wrong, unethical. Yes. It might even be a criminal.
Yes.
And so he makes the case that that's exactly what the feds have done with Trump, that by ignoring Biden, Clinton, both Clintons, and etc., they have just focused on Trump, and that in and of itself is proof that it is weaponized, politicized, and it's and again, 10 years from now, some historian or some, you said this before, some inspector general might come out and say it was criminal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's true. My point in all of this is I want to sort of drill down into a very specific area of this. And the thing that disturbed me as all of this was coming out, and that was the granting of the exception to the attorney-client privilege, which to me is disturbing. And I dare say that if it was anybody other than Donald Trump, right, there would be a much greater hue and cry raised, especially from the so-called civil libertarians that are out there.
There's been very little.
Yes. And there are, it's interesting because there are exceptions to this, something called the crime fraud exception. So you can engage in a conspiracy with your lawyer to commit a crime.
Better call Saul.
Yes,
if you want to just a kind of dumbed down version of this, the reason why Saul had to run was because he had entered into the criminal enterprise.
Yes. And so,
I don't think that's the case, however, with Donald Trump and his attorneys.
Here is my point in all of this, is that this gets into, you and I have had the discussion before about the difference between general intent and specific intent, right? And general intent just merely means that you need to know that you were doing something that contributed to the criminal act, right? You just need to know that you killed a person. The prime example I used I like to use is the Clean Water Act, right? If you discharge something, you don't have to know that you're discharging a pollutant in order for it to be considered a crime. As long as you knew that you turn the switch or the lever and something got dumped, then you're guilty of criminally violating the Clean Water Act. It's a general intent standard. Most criminal intent standards are specific. You have to know that you're breaking the law in order for it to be a specific crime.
And also, just to add to what you just said, this idea of intent,
yes,
matters. Again, this is why on its face, why they did not charge Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Because even though she broke the law, and again, go back and listen to the Comey tapes, she broke the law.
Right.
It's not a question. It's not a debate. She broke the law. But he went into what was best for the Republic,
right,
in terms of the prosecution, and secondly, intent.
Right.
And if you apply that standard to Trump, there never should be an indictment.
And my point here is that in the end, there is now long-standing, over 30 years of Supreme Court precedent, which says that in terms of making this exception to attorney-client privilege over the crime fraud exception, it has to be specific intent. Both parties have to go into this intending to engage in some kind of criminal act.
And here's, yes. And if you read, again, this is why I think before anyone comments, go and read the indictments.
Absolutely. That's my
it reads to me, where Trump says to his attorneys, pull a Hillary Clinton for me. Yes. Go make the evidence disappear. it seems to me that Trump is just being Trump.
Yes,
he's inarticulate. He's not of a legal mind. He's just saying viscerally what's coming to his mouth. This would be like you and me having a private conversation, and I, you know, and someone did something to my family, and I say to you out of frustration or anger, Andrew, I'm going to kill him.
Right. Andrew, you call me up. It's a great example. You call me up angry about somebody. While you're angry. Yeah. And you say, I need you to come and help me bury a body. Right. And I know you're not serious.
Right. And there's no body to bury.
There's no body to bury.
Right.
And yet here we are. This is
in the Trump indictment, there was no incriminating evidence to get rid of.
That's exactly it.
So this is how messed up all of this is. So Trump might be guilty of obstructing, because he told his attorneys, get rid of the evidence. Now, he didn't say that way. I'm just paraphrasing. Get rid of the evidence. But the thing is that there is no evidence to get rid of.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, yes. And as evidence of that, the fact that he was storing the boxes in the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, here's the thing, right? We could talk about this and you know, we can talk about what's good for the goose and what's good for the gander. In the same vein that Joe Biden's storing documents that he wasn't supposed to have in his garage next to his Corvette. And by the way, I've never made this comment before, but Joe Biden having a Corvette is like the most Joe Biden thing ever. Yeah. I mean, you know, anyway, but the point is, it's like you couldn't pull a Bobby. You haven't watched Billions. You couldn't pull a Bobby Axelrod and keep there's no vault. You don't have a vault at Mar-a-Lago.
But again,
a secure wine cellar. You know, with a combination lock, you could keep
one of our bottom line points here, and this is more for those who are contorting themselves to say that Trump is guilty.
Yeah.
What the DOJ should have done is just apply the Clinton-Biden standard to Trump.
Right.
And if that's the case, then there never should have been a raid. There never should have been indictments. There never should have been a special prosecutor. None of this should have happened.
And let me sort of, as we talk about this issue of the raid, because that's a good point to bring up, Jerry, and we talk about the politicization here. This is a DOJ, and this is why Jonathan Turley, I don't think he mentioned this case, but you know, why Jonathan Turley has written a piece this week saying that Merrick Garland has been an utter failure. And he's absolutely correct in this regard.
A great piece.
Yes.
I think it's in the Hill. I posted it over at Real Clear Policy, but you're exactly an utter failure.
This is a DOJ that has, you know, not hesitated to use the full force of the militarized law enforcement,
right,
to go after its opponents for political reason, and
right, pro-lifers,
right,
parents concerned about school curricula around the nation, Donald Trump. Look, it is plain. If you can divorce yourself from politics, which is very difficult to do, but if you could look at this with as clear-eyed as possible. The DOJ is weaponized. There is no question. But I have to say this because this sounds
and I want to go
ahead. This sounds like we're having a very pro-Trump conversation. Look, I want to be clear about this. I think this whole episode, Trump invited on himself.
100%.
He should have, in good faith, released this material. He did kind of, part of my language, but he did kind of screw around with the archives.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know why he did it, but he did kind of screw around. So I think this whole episode, coupled with the political losses, 2020, 2021 special elections, 2022 midterms, I think Donald Trump he's disqualified. He should not be the nominee for the GOP.
Let me add to this, which is, you know, Donald Trump's, now listen, we all know it's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to get out there and he's going to be blustery and defiant about these things. That's who he is. But he does not do himself any favors when he gets out there and he says, we're going to get rid of the DOJ and the FBI. And that's that I have a problem with. And again, right, this is not to say that the FBI and the DOJ shouldn't be thoroughly reformed, that there shouldn't be massive amounts of oversight. Right. But, you know, this is the argument that Donald Trump is incapable of making because he's Donald Trump. Right? The thoughtful, substantive candidate says we need a Frank Church oversight hearing to get into this. The Frank Church was a senator from Idaho after the abuses of the CIA in the 1950s, 1960s, and into the early 1970s. Church opened up a series of hearings into the CIA. Now, I will say that some of this damaged the CIA going into the Carter administration. Not that we need to go down this rabbit hole, but the bottom line is having a thorough accounting of what this DOJ and FBI are doing is vitally important.
Right. And also, and again, for those who say, well, you can't reform or transform the FBI or the CIA. Well, we've done it before.
Sure.
The FBI was something different before it became the FBI under Hoover. The CIA, right? The CIA developed from the counterintelligence efforts during World War II. My point is that we can reinvent the FBI. We can reinvent the intelligence communities so they are more in line with our republic, democratic values. And in fact, it's necessary. But you're right. Donald Trump going out there and saying these inane things again proves he's just not qualified.
I will say this. I'm going to do a tease myself on Thursday. I think it's Thursday. I have the rare opportunity to interview Leon Panetta, the former defense secretary, former CIA director. I'm not sure when that interview is going to be released.
That's great.
But I'm interviewing him this week to talk about intelligence and foreign policy and where things stand.
Now, he's an honest actor. I'd be very curious, and I'm not sure exactly what you're going to get into with him, but I'd be interested in his views on reform at DOJ, at FBI, at CIA.
That's what I'm gonna ask him about. I mean, that's, you know, when I had Bob Levy on the show on the Lunch Hour podcast, you know, it was very
remind the audience who Bob Levy is.
Bob Levy is a former daily columnist for the Washington Post. He also did a radio show not just at WMAL but also at WBAL for a brief time period.
Yeah.
But Bob Levy is a progressive, a true, you know, tried and true liberal. And he's deeply troubled with things like free speech and the attacks on free speech and the First Amendment in America.
Let me say this. And we haven't really talked politics a lot. I mean, during this show, we mentioned no labels, but let me say this. And again, because we have a lot of friends who are pro-Trump, and they get angry with us when we're critical of Donald Trump. But again, I want to throw this out there. Donald Trump just turned 78 years old.
Yeah.
He is, even if he wins, and I don't think the numbers are there. I think Biden beats him. I think Harris beats him. I think Westmore beats him. I think that we're looking at a devastating 2024 if Trump's top of the ticket. And again, you want evidence for that. Look at Georgia, look at the Wisconsin Supreme Court, look at the midterms. I mean, it's just on and on. He has not won. Donald Trump has not won anything since 2016. Now, that being said, even if he does win, he's an immediate lame duck.
Right. Yes, you've said
so.
This.
Why are we? And also, he'll be 79 years old, approaching 80. Why pro-Trumpers? Why do you want to elect someone who's going to be pushing 80 and a lame duck?
Let me.
It makes no sense.
Let me add to this, because I had a conversation with a Trump appointee over the weekend, who is, shall we say, gun shy about returning to a Trump administration. This is a very different. Now, I say this. Jerry and I have talked about this. We know.
Just add color to this real quick. Right, rejoining a Trump administration. Right, in the context of Donald Trump can't even get attorneys to represent him in this indictment. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we know that the Heritage Foundation and America First Policy Institute
are
both engaged in efforts to make sure that that on day one of a Trump administration, whoever gets elected, they're hoping Trump, that whoever gets elected, that they're able to sort of jump into this, feet first, which is what they were able to do, though hampered in 2017, right? A lot of good things happened within the first 100 days in 2017. This is not 2016, 2017. There are a lot of folks who will be a lot more gun shy about going in. Why? Because they saw what happened to folks who went into the administration. They know that if anything, the American left is going to be even more angry. The American left learned from the what they were able to do throughout the Trump administration in terms of being able to frustrate Trump's ability to implement policy.
Sure.
They are going to refine that and do more of it. And I say this now, yes, they're going to try to do the same thing regardless of who gets elected if it's a Republican. Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, Kristi Noem, Tim Scott, whoever, but it will be different because they will, a Ron DeSantis does not come with the same baggage in terms of bringing it in. In fact, I will say this much, because hold on, Jerry, because the left is so over the top about their hatred of Ron DeSantis and calling him a fascist and worse than Trump, folks will be more energized to go and work for a DeSantis administration than they would, because DeSantis is a fighter and does not come with the baggage that Trump does.
And what DeSantis can do and Tim Scott can do and the others is they know how to make an argument.
Right.
Donald Trump, again, for all his bluster, for all his standing and not backing down on taxes, not backing down on Israel, not backing down on myriad issues, regulations. He was good for the first 2 years of his presidency. He was exactly what we needed. But then again, his lack of depth, his lack of understanding how government works. I'll say this again to my pro-Trump friends. I believe this indictment, all 37 counts, are bogus. I think the whole thing is bogus. However, that doesn't mean he's not in legal jeopardy, because you make false statements and you obstruct. Remember, the federal government can define obstruction as they want. Yes. So Donald Trump is in legal jeopardy. But that being said, all of Donald Trump's problems, you can't blame the entirety on the left, on the Never Trumpers. There's a good portion of what he suffers is his own fault.
Right.
I'll give you an example of this. And I think when the primary season heats up, you're going to see Nikki Haley, Kristi Noem, Ron DeSantis. You're going to see Chris Christie and others pound Donald Trump on his failed COVID policies.
Right. Oh, that's an excellent point. There is a legitimate schism within the former Donald Trump coalition over COVID. And as we get the latest, Marty Makary was tweeting out today about suicide numbers in COVID.
Right.
That is going to come back and haunt Trump to no end.
I talked to, and you know who it is, I won't say his name, but a former member of the administration this week who said that, and he was in this person's a healthcare in the healthcare agencies. He believed Trump when they said 15 days.
Yeah.
And then 15 days became 30 days.
Right. 15 days became 50. Yeah.
And Donald Trump never, I'll say this, he never made an attempt until it was too late to push the governors and the county executives and the mayors. Remember, the president had limited power here, aside from the federal purse strings and the bully pulpit. But see, Trump,
it's the bully pulpit that was the
but also issue. Tying COVID relief funds to reopening the economy. Donald Trump didn't have the sophistication to understand that he could leverage government to get cities to reopen. He never understood that. Also, he never understood how to use the bully pulpit. You and I witnessed this. He would go on these rambling 2-hour rambling rants on COVID, where again he never said inject sunshine, swallow sunshine, or take bleach. He never said those things.
Right.
But it's almost besides the point, because in his ramblings, you would only pick up on the ridiculous.
Yes.
And that's so again to my pro-Trump friends, why do you want more of that?
Yes. Right. And listen, and let's keep in mind that the folks who advised Trump in 2016 going into 2017 are gone. So it's going to be a very different campaign. The first test being, and this is, I made this point. I was talking to John Justice this morning. I don't. It's not that I don't believe polling numbers right now. I just don't think they matter.
They don't matter. You know what? You are 100% correct. Yeah. They don't matter. And what matters less are the national poll numbers.
Well, yes, but my point is, and even going into the Iowa straw poll, because I remember, something. I was working I did a brief stint with a political and policy public affairs firm in the summer of 1999 when I came back to DC, before I went to work with Jerry at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. And they were working with a lower tier candidate going into the 2000 election. And I watched as they were scrambling to try to get folks to the Iowa straw poll, right? The Iowa straw poll, in similar ways to the Iowa caucuses, only with less stakes, and it's much easier to do. The Iowa straw poll is all about mobilizing people. And even then, I think Donald Trump is in the catbird seat because he's Donald Trump. But if Donald Trump fails to blow out any of the candidates, least of all Ron DeSantis, then the straw poll is an utter failure for Trump. But that's just right. I don't even remember, Jerry. Do you remember this? In the summer of 2015, Trump didn't even participate in the straw poll, did he? He didn't.
Well, again, the first couple of contests, he claimed that people were cheating, that he was robbed.
That's right.
I mean, again,
sorry. So let me just lay this out because we're running short on time. As I said, we want to do it tight, bright, and out of sight. Here is what I think happens with this. And one of the great problems is that the trial is being delayed until well into the process, the presidential selection process.
Which again, you mentioned how this doesn't make us, or isn't evidence by itself that we're turning into a banana republic. But the fact of the matter that we're going to have this trial in the midst of a national election.
Yeah, but isn't the judge
in this case insane?
But isn't the judge in this case, isn't she a Trump appointee?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm going to comment real quick. I mean, what does that matter?
Well, I mean, it matters insofar as if she was truly political, then she would do something to sort of hasten this and not have.
I know, but all of these pundits are saying that this is wrong. She should recuse herself. So we only get a fair judge.
I don't think she should recuse herself. Yeah. I'm just saying that it cuts both ways. My point in all of this is I suspect that Donald Trump will be found guilty on one or more counts in all of this, but then several years down the road, a la Bob McDonnell, the former governor of Virginia, the conviction is overturned on appeal.
By the way, who was the special prosecutor in the governor's?
I do not remember that.
It's this special prosecutor.
Oh, there you go. So there you go.
The same person. So just to clarify that,
I appreciate that.
The same person who wrongly prosecuted the former GOP governor of Virginia,
GOP governor who was a rising star in the party, and everybody expected to run for president against Barack Obama in 2012. He was blown out by this special prosecutor.
And again,
making that point.
But here's the thing too. There is, for my anti-Trump friends who think that the Obama administration used the Department of Justice to go after Chris Christie.
Right.
The Obama Department of Justice went after what was his name? Bob
McDonnell.
Bob McDonnell in Virginia. Yeah. The Democrats have a history of using the Department of Justice to go after their political enemies.
Right.
This really should be the conversation about how Obama and Biden have weaponized the Department of Justice.
Right. Listen, as Nixonian as we say Joe Biden is, Obama was Nixon 2.0.
He was the master
when it came to the weaponization of government power against political opponents.
And he's still there, right? This week, again, slightly off topic, but Obama this week talking about how Senator Tim Scott, African-American from South Carolina, Nikki Haley, right? Indian American, East Asian American, they don't really know the true plight of minorities. They don't speak truth about the minority experience. Again, Obama is saying these things to a friendly podcast.
Sure.
It was Axelrod, right?
Oh, I don't know, but yeah,
it was one of, I think his former chief of staff. But regardless, he's saying these things because what they're trying to do is stifle the exchange of ideas.
Sure, of course.
So if you disagree with Barack Obama, well, then you're a racist,
right?
If you believe that the the indictment of Donald Trump is politicized, well, then you're just a Trumper. You're just a ultra MAGA. Well, no. And again, that should tell people too. The very fact that the other side has to other their political opponents is telling. It shows that this is all politics.
Right. And that's what we have to guard ourselves against.
Yes.
Jerry.
Yes.
You are in this week on WBAL, are you not?
I am going to be on June 22nd, on June 23rd, and of course my own show on June 25th. I'll be at WBAL. And again, what I'm trying to do there is very simple. Speak the truth, regardless of how provocative or uncomfortable. I'll give you an example real quick. I know we're going to cut it short, or we're going to end the show. We talked a little bit about, because it's Juneteenth, right? This week, celebrating Juneteenth. And we talked about race and how Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland, really is leveraging race to put himself in the national conversation. Wes Moore is the first African-American governor of Maryland, and really talks a lot about race and his place as the first African-American governor. And I challenged him and his supporters, if we're going to have a conversation about race in this country and structural racism, then we should be talking about the public school system,
right?
Which traps African-American kids in failed schools, and we should be talking about abortion, where in states like Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi, where African Americans are a quarter of the population, they represent 70% of all abortions. Right. So my point in saying that is, this is the conversation. We're going to have this conversation at WBAL over those 3 dates.
I am obviously recording more episodes of the Lunch Hour. I'm not sure when this week's episode is going to be released, but I am in for Tony Katz on WIBC of next week. Yes, the week before July 4th. Go and check that out, the Tony Katz Show. Tony Katz today, actually, noon to 3 p.m. Eastern time is when I'm on for Tony. By the way, shoot, I don't have it with me. Tony Katz has a new book out, Jerry, on barbecuing. And I believe it's called Let's Meet. I got to go look. I am included in this. I helped him write the section on how to smoke ribs. So go and check that out. Very good. Then the week, July 4th week, I am in for Larry O'Connor hosting O'Connor and Company on WMAL in Washington, D.C. So go and check that out as well. But Jerry and I will find a way to do a podcast in those times. Jerry, what do you want folks to do?
Well, you got to find the truth, plant your feet, and stand firm. God bless you.
Have a great week, everybody. Have fun, and please stay safe.